What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're jumping in the Beamer and we're going to be putting some extra gauges in. Now these are gauges that are not actually going to be hooked up today. They're going to be powered and everything, but they're not going to be reading anything because they are going to be for the new engine. So what we've got, I don't like gauges that sit on top of the dash. I think it looks really messy. And there was a couple of options that you could kind of put the gauges behind the steering wheel, but it kind of looked like Mickey Mouse ears. Wasn't a big fan, but I did find someone on eBay and Etsy were making these. So these go in your air vents and you can still use your air vents. Obviously you lose some directional kind of thing, but I was a big fan. I think it looks really clean and tidy, looks really smart. So we're gonna run these. Now I've got two for the centers and I've got one for the driver side as well. So I'm gonna be running 3 new gauges. So let's get in there and install them all. All right, so we've got our 3 gauge pods here. Now what I did, I actually went through and I sanded them down a bit because there was marks along this edge, and so on. As you can see, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but some printing ridges around there. That's fine because the bevel of the gauge is gonna sit on that kind of thing. So that didn't bother me, but just the actual faces on here, I wanted to make sure was nice and perfect. So yeah, just a bit of a sand and then just some satin black paint, all good. Now, one issue with the gauge pods and the gauges, as you can see, they've got the locking ring on the back, which is great, but when you pop them in here, actually, the paint has made it sit a lot nicer. It was wriggling around a little bit in here. Sorry about the focus. Was wriggling around a little bit, and a good solution, easy solution for that is just electrical tape. So you just run a couple of layers of electrical tape around the back, get it situated, and I can't put the locking ring on anymore, so I'm just going to put a couple of dabs of silicone under here. Nice and easy, keep it secure, happy days. And if I ever need to pull it out, obviously I can just remove this, rip those bits of silicone off, and it'll be great. Now that's really good. I'm stoked that a couple of layers of paint has done that, but previously I put them in there and it did wobble around a bit. I mean, it may happen in these, and if it does, I'll just do a couple layers of this and you'll never see it because I will put it here around this kind of this point where you'd never even notice it, and get it in there nice and snug, and then just the silicone on the back to let it seal. So I'm going to go through and do that on all 3 of these. Now we are running oil temp, oil pressure and boost. So I'm going to have oil temp, oil pressure and boost, same kind of orientation as the Supra, so no matter what car I get in, I know that I can see the same amount of things, same kind of detail of the engine in each car, and this engine will be boosted in the future, so I want to run this as well. Yes, I know I'm going to be running a boost gauge in a car that's not boosted at the moment, but whatever. This is all pre-works for the engine conversion. Now, something I did want to touch on with boost gauges is there's multiple kinds that you can pick up. The kind that I like is the one with this. So this is actually the sensor in the engine bay. This will sit, say, on your firewall. That will your vacuum line will run off to where you'll pick up your boost from, and then your wires will just go through the firewall and then connect up to the wires on the back of the actual gauge. I prefer this because then you're only running a short amount of vacuum hose. If the hose gets a hole in it, if the hose gets damaged, whatever, you just rip that off, replace it. If you're running a vacuum hose all the way into the cab, it's really annoying. If you guys have pulled cables or anything through a firewall before, you know how annoying that can get. And it would normally have that kind of nipple on the back of the gauge for that. I'm not a big fan because yeah, as soon as you damage it, you've got to rip it out or take the section out and then put joiners in, stuff like that. Not a big fan. So I will always look for this style, and this one came with it. The only thing I don't like about these gauges, they weren't super expensive, but I wanted this exact setup. I wanted all black. I wanted clear lenses. I didn't want smoked lenses because I have them in the Supra and they actually do kind of bug me a little bit on really sunny days. So nice and clear, nice and clean, and they light up every color. And also they've got a cool little feature. They not only have the analog, but they've got the digital reading as well. So for example, I can just look over and see my pressure's at whatever it is, my temp's at whatever it is, instead of looking at the gauge. It's a lot quicker. Thought it was just a nice little feature to add that in. But the only thing is, some of the gauges, so like the ones in the Supra, they'll have power in and then power out, so you can daisy chain between all of your gauges and only have one kind of tap feed for the LED lights. This doesn't have that, so I'm just gonna have to kind of make my own setup, which is easy. It's just, that was a nice feature of the last gauges. So, I'm gonna go through, slide all these in, and see if they need tape, see whatever they do need, get them mounted. And one thing I do like with these mounts, because the vent slots are obviously horizontal, you can line up your gauge exactly with those vents and know that it's perfectly lined up and spot on, instead of just having like a gauge and going, oh, I hope that's perfectly lined up. Just a little OCD moment for me. All right, let's get these gauges in, mounted, and then we can get in the car, start pulling that apart and wiring them in. Okay, silicon's all on, just real simple beads, and as you can see, I've only done a little bit at the bottom and then a smidge at the top, and I've done it in points where you're not going to be able to see it through the vents. They're very small kind of beads, and you won't see any of that through the vents at the front, and they're literally just there just to hold it nice and secure, so that I know in my head as I'm driving along and doing whatever, road vibrations, blah blah blah, they're not going to like shake out or whatever. And you can see right there, it's one bead. If I ever need to pull them out because they, like say the gauge fails or something, literally come back, peel that out, peel the front out and pull the gauge out, done, easy, okay? That's why I suggest silicon and things like that. If you run a nice decent size bead, obviously nothing crazy, it'll hold to itself and you can just peel that out later. But for the time being, it will hold in nice and secure. Just like the rear diffuser, that's sitting perfect now. Doesn't move at all because I've done like beads of silicon across those locating pins. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But now it's time to go to the car and pull out the stock vents so I can pull the fins out of those and install these in place. Obviously, I'll let this all set and I'll do the wiring first and then I can pop these in. All right, so boost gauge is going to go here. As you can see, it takes place of these fins here. Now, cheat code, if you have a car in storage that you know you're going to do another job on, don't install things back in properly like this. I didn't actually install it correctly. The clips in there are in the ashtray over here, and I haven't put it in properly because I knew I was going to have to pull this out in a number of weeks. So now all I have to do is pull that screw out, slide it out, and I can have a play. I actually haven't done this before. Shocker. Most of the things I do, I haven't done before. But I need to learn how to do that, pull it out without damaging it. Now they do say be careful, because if in the future I got sick of the gauges or I sold the car and the next owner hates them, whatever it may be, you can always install these back into place. So what we're going to do is pull the fins out, slide the gauge pod in, put a little dab of super glue in each corner, tiny little dab, because they say that secures it nicely. Not like big beads or anything, because obviously if we do want to revert this back to factory, we can. But yeah, little dab in each corner and then we'll be sweet. So I'm just going to put the camera down, pull that out, and then we'll have a bit of a play and learn how to do it. And then obviously we can come over here. This one's going to be a little bit annoying because I did install all of that correctly. I'm going to have to pull that out, that out. I think I'm going to have to pull a head unit out, which is fine. These are a bit of a pain to pull out. So with a lot of this stuff, it's kind of like put some pressure and pop it out, but it is a little bit scary. You don't want to break things. So let's start on this one over here and see how we go. Okay, that was actually super easy. It was just one screw. That other one wasn't in because previous maintenance clearly didn't put it back in, and it just popped out. So that's great. That's good news for this one. So now I've just got to take out the vents. I'm going to have a bit of a play here, pop that whole back section off, pull those vents out of the back. Let's see how we go. Oh yeah, that looks all right. All right, so the best way to show you is on this piece here. See these like textured pieces? They're like small welds. You have to get, they say, an X-Acto blade. You have to cut through those to be able to take this piece off and then the fins out. So I'm just gonna do that off camera, just so you guys don't see me get really frustrated, because this is gonna take a while. I'm gonna be as careful as I can with it and not damage it. So I'm gonna have to go obviously through that line there, this line here. There's a few pieces all the way around, and then obviously on this piece as well. And then we'll be able to actually install the gauges. So I'm gonna do that quickly right now. All right, that actually wasn't too bad at all. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it was, pieces. 4, 5, yep, 5 little bits. You just kind of unstick them and then you're good to go. Pops off. Now, when we put it back together, you will put a little bit of like super glue on these just to hold it all back together. And if you ever need to, just snap that super glue and you're all good. So I'm gonna go through, pull these blades out. Again, doing it very gently because if I want to, I can put them all back in the future. Obviously, direction and stuff isn't gonna work anymore. Up and down and sideways, it's just gonna blow straight out. But on a really hot day, that's kind of all I need. I just need cold air in the cabin. So that's why I like that the fins will still be there to a degree. And also you have to just pry that kind of edge. Sorry, you can't really see that, the lighting's terrible. You just need to pry it off of that wheel just back there. Just a little gentle like pry, and it pops out and then it all slides out. Now, I'm hoping I don't have to take these back ones out, but I have a feeling I'm going to. I'll see how far back we have to go, but whatever I take out, I will save for the future. All right, so that's it in place. Now, you pull the fins out from the back and you put the gauge in the front. I've also run a bead of silicone on the inside here and at the top. I actually thought it was going to hold itself in that way, but it's the other way around. So that's all good. The silicone will hold it really good anyway. And like I've said earlier in the video, you can always scratch silicone off. So I'm gonna let that set, and I'm just gonna jump over to this one here, cut those little sections, pull out the fins, and then mount those two. Now, as you can see through there, there's the other fins back there. I'm assuming they're gonna have to come out as well because the gauges do sit quite far back. So I'm gonna pull them out, and these ones here, because I mean, I can't use them anyway. They're not gonna direct left and right. So I'll just pop them out. As you can see, we've just got locating pins at the top. So I'm gonna bundle these together and put them in a little plastic bag, and the same with all of this. So I can go back to factory if I ever wish, but I mean, I'm not going to, but I can. All right, a little update time. So I've drilled a hole there for the cable to come in, because obviously I don't want to run it all the way through, like back through the foam or anything like that. So yes, I've drilled a hole, too bad. I've also drilled a hole in the back of this one and the back of this one so I can feed the cables down. As you can see, I have cable tied it all together so that all these weld points are all nice and close and touching. And then I've super glued all of them with like a lot of super glue. There's like a puddle in each of those, obviously because I need to connect it all together. And when that sets, we're pretty much good. I'll plug the power cable in the back, feed it through the hole at the bottom, and I can put that back in place and it's done. And then I can wire up in the future. I'm obviously just going to be putting the 12 volts, I'm gonna wire them up, but I'm only gonna be putting the 12 volts on and obviously the ground, because there's nothing that these are gonna be plugged into. So all the sensors and everything I'll leave in the boxes and they'll go on the new motor. But for now, they'll just be gauges that light up. So I'll be able to show you what they look like finished product. You just won't be able to see the needle moving. So we'll let all this dry off. We'll go pop them back in the car and connect them up to some 12 volt. So obviously what we're gonna do is grab our 12 volt off the accessories and a ground as well. In the back of this plug here, you can actually access the metal side of the pins. Now I'm assuming it's going to be that yellow and the black next to it, because the yellow is the thickest cable. Generally that's your 12 volt, but I'll test it anyway. So I've got my multimeter here, I'll chuck it on there, key on, key off, things like that. Then I'm going to tap in just one cable and I'm going to run it up, one on each, obviously, one 12 and then one ground. I'll run it up here and then behind the dash over to here, terminate the end for this gauge, and then jump off of the cables for these two gauges. Then when I actually install all the sensors and things like that, I will just be able to access the power and ground off of those two cables. So I'm gonna go get my multimeter and then give a couple of tests. All right, so the yellow is the 12 volt constant and the red is actually my switched 12, which is what I want for the gauges. I don't want them to be on forever, obviously. And then the black is my earth. Now, yours is probably going to be different. Obviously, that's the actual factory harness. This is the harness that came with my head unit, into there and into there. I'm not getting back here. Like, that is just going to be a pain. It's going to be just a headache to get back to. So I'm just going to tap off of here, nice and easy. All right, so as you can see, we've tapped in here. So now we've got accessibility for up there, and also over here, I've just run it behind there. For now, we need to just wait. You guys won't have to wait, but I've got to wait until all that glue dries, and then once the glue's dried, I can put the gauges back in place and then just wire them up to these points and we'll be all good. So let's go get the gauges. All right, boys, back with day two. I have come back in and I've put the proper clip on here, things like that, little stuff. I brought them in from home. I'm gonna be honest with you, I was a little bit ambitious. I tried to put this panel in a little bit too early. the glue hadn't set on those little seams that we had to break or cut or whatever you want to call it. So it actually popped apart. Pretty annoyed. Had to go and re-glue it last night. Left it overnight, should be good. Now, unfortunately, reinstalling this piece to here is quite a pain. Don't know why, but it just doesn't want to slide in nice and easy. We have to kind of go in that way and then clip it in. So I'm gonna give that a go, see if I can get it in today, wire it up, and then put it all back together, and we're done. All right, it's in. I was really nervous about that just because you've got to like cut the welds, whatever they call it, the plastic welds, the seams, whatever, and then glue it and all that kind of thing. And it's 3D printed, so obviously there can be imperfections, things like that. I really, really wanted this to sit perfect and nice and flush, just the way it does. It is sitting perfect. Now, I need to wire these up, just the power and the ground, because like I've said earlier, I'll do the rest later on. Now, just so you guys know, I didn't bring them into the car, but I've actually got proper plugs that you have pins and they're waterproof and all that. I know it doesn't have to be waterproof in here, but there's all pins and all that kind of stuff. When I actually do the final install with the sensors and so on, I'm actually going to be installing it with proper plugs and pins, just so that it's perfect. This is just, I mean, like, this is what most people would run all the time, but I want it to be 100%, not 98%. So I will be doing that when we come back in and do the motor conversion. This is just to get them kind of mounted, wired up to make sure they kind of like light up, work, all that kind of thing. And then we can just do the actual technical side of it later on when the engine's out, and we can just slide, you know, coat hangers through the firewall, things like that. So let's jump in, wire it up, put everything back together. There we have it, boys. All done, just like I bought one. All the gauges match. Nice crisp white. Obviously they're all reading the lowest they can. There we go. A little bit of light on the subject for you. Ooh, that steering wheel though. Now they've come up really good. I'm glad they're not dim. They're not like bad quality. You can change all the colors and stuff. But I'm gonna leave them on crisp white because it looks nice and clean and tidy. And I'm so stoked how well this is mounted. It's not pulled up. It's not, you know, hanging out at all. It's great. Really, really happy. And then this one over here, same scenario. Sits nice and flush. Looks perfect. Stoked. All right, boys, so that's me done for this video. Gauges are in. That's some more prep work done, ready for the new engine. Now, yes, I know, like I probably said earlier in the video, yeah, you got gauges that aren't working. It's Brycer, whatever. The car barely gets driven, so this is all just pre-works, just so that when we do the motor conversion, it's a lot simpler. Instead of, oh, and we got to do the gauges, oh, and we got to do this, oh, and we got to do this, you know, try and get as many things done before the motor comes out, while I can still drive it and move it and that kind of thing. As much as I can do, I want to do, so then when it's motor time and gearbox time, it's literally pull it out, put the new one in, and then deal with any issues I'm going to have there, like, you know, I don't know, steering column issues or radiator issues or whatever it may be. You know, if I've got to do things like new aircon lines, new gearbox cooler lines, all things like that, just to make everything work. So knowing that there's going to be that amount of things, then I want to obviously lower the amount of issues that, or not issues, but, you know, things that we're going to have to do. So these are in. Interior's looking mint, and it would be nice to have all those things that we spoke about in the everything wrong with the E46 video done before the motor goes in. Then it's literally motor, gearbox, get it going, car's sweet. All right, guys, thanks for coming along for this video. I hope this helps. If you're going to run these, it's kind of showing you how to do them. They're real easy. It's fiddly, but it's easy. You can do it. You'd be able to do it at home. So hope you liked. If you did, please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. See you guys.